welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and we welcome our birthday girl, Ms. Grabowski. Just gonna put her on Front Street right at the beginning of the meeting. We are going to get started. If you would please take a moment to look at the agenda. And I will leave our closing comments for our superintendent. She's a bit delayed, but she is en route. My opening comments are that we've had a lot of conversation about the quality of our performance as a district over the last few months. Many of you probably tuned in to our board retreat where we really dug into our operational data as well as in our literacy data. And we have some growing, we have some emerging to do. There are some things that you'll see from the data today that we've done well, but others that require a little more digging. And so consequently, the leadership team is talking about ways to look at our data more frequently and facilitate conversations, not just among ourselves, but conversations that allow the public to talk about the data that are being generated on the dashboards that we use internally and the ones that we generate externally. So do look in the coming months for kind of what that plan is going to be and opportunities to participate across the district, not just this group of those who are in the room and not just passively the ones who watch online, but for everyone to really demonstrate their buy-in in our learning outcomes. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. It's been properly moved by Mrs. Hall. Is there a second? Okay, it's been seconded by Dr. Tanya Howard Hall. Are there any modifications that need to be made, any changes to the agenda? Okay, not hearing any discussion on that. All in favor of approving the agenda as printed signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye. Awesome, okay. It is approved. Similarly, we have our minutes from the July 22nd Board Accountability Meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? It's been properly moved by Mrs. Hall. Is there a second? It's been seconded by Mrs. Campbell. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Nope.
So I'll say no.
Okay. So it has been properly moved and second to approve the minutes, and I hear from Mrs. Hall's comment with any necessary corrections. All in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right, the minutes and the agenda have been approved. I am excited about this presentation. We are going to be hearing about foundational literacy, and so we look to hear from Dr. May and Ms. Goldman.
Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to present on foundational literacy today and to make sure that we're honing in on the key components of this presentation. I'd like to go over the goals of this presentation. We're trying to highlight the importance of foundational skills for student learning and academic success as indexed by reading proficiency. We know that literacy skills are essential for learning across all subjects, and that ability to decode words accurately and automatically really set that stage for truly being able to comprehend and process information effectively. As such, today's presentation will present foundational literacy key performance index data. So we will look at our school year 2025 data and also a look back and compare that to school year 2024. And of particular interest, we will also present on current school year 2026, beginning of year performance. So you can get a snapshot of where students are to date.
Dr. May, do you prefer to go all the way through the presentation and have questions afterwards, or do you want to have discussion during the presentation? Which do you prefer?
Dr. Huskins-Brown, it's really per your preference.
Okay, all right.
Either way is fine with me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also will present student group data. So one of the things I wanted to point out is I know we're used to talking them as subgroups. Godot has moved to the terminology student group to recognize all of them. So we'll look at economically disadvantaged students, English learners, and students with disability and see what their performance looks like as well. And as we wrap up the presentation, Ms. Goldman will highlight key literacy strategies. So we'll talk about high-quality instruction based on the science of reading, implementation of Georgia's new K-12 ELA standards, professional learning, and family and community engagement. As you know, this KPI is aligned with Strategic Priority 1, Student Growth and Achievement for Choice-Filled Futures, and we're specifically looking at our Key Performance Index under Performance Objective A, promoting the development of foundational skills in literacy and numeracy through high-quality instruction and support for diverse learners. This KPI looks at the aggregate data across grades K through, so kindergarten through second grade, and whether students are meeting or exceeding expected growth in foundational literacy skills as measured by AMIRA. So one thing to note before we get into the actual data is this KPI reflects the percentage of students in grades kindergarten through second who meet or exceed expected growth in their AMIRA reading mastery score. So we'll talk about what that score index is and how it's computed and what it reflects. We'll also we'll talk about the fact that this KPI centers around, since we're talking about growth, comparing students from the beginning of year as they grow throughout the academic year. So we're comparing that beginning of year to the end of year and looking at their percentile rank scores at beginning, middle, and end of year. The AMIRA Reading Assessment provides an index that is known as the AMIRA Reading Mastery Score. The growth in foundational literacy skills KPI is based on the percentage of the students in kindergarten through second who meet or exceed the expected growth on the AMIRA Reading Mastery Score based on that comparison of the beginning of year to end of year percentile rank scores. I reiterate this because students can demonstrate meeting or exceeding expected growth in one of two ways. They can either maintain or increase their AMIRA Reading Mastery Score, their ARM percentile rank, from the beginning of year assessment to the end of year assessment, or they may maintain an ARM percentile rank in the above grade level range, the 76th to 99th percentile, for both the beginning and the end of year assessment. So they're one of two ways in which students were captured in this KPI. So when looking at what the ARM score reflects, it's important to understand that the ARM score is a composite score that incorporates student performance, demonstrated ability as they engage with AMIRA in context of the assessment, and the various tasks that align directly with the science of reading and the 5 key pillars of literacy. So AMIRA is based upon the science of reading, and it assesses performance. The tasks are centered around performance in phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. The ARM score itself is compared against national norms for each student's specific grade level. So they are grade level based norms. The ARM itself is interesting in the way that it reads. The initial number, the 2, in this example, reflects the grade level. And then you'll see a decimal, and the next number that follows that decimal, 5 in this example, is the month of the school year. So you get pinpoint accuracy of exactly where that student is. So if the student receives a 2.5, that student is in second grade and he or she is in the 5th month of school. You all know how much I love accuracy, so this is something that's near and dear to talking about student performance and being able to really pinpoint where they are. With the ARM score, we get meaningful information about their reading ability and their ability to progress during the course of the school year. So you're expecting that arm score obviously to grow as the year progresses. So if the student is a 2.0 at the beginning of year, you'd like to see a 2.5, and then maybe a 2.9, perhaps a 3 point something by the end of year. We're looking for that growth. The percentile rank is how the ARM score is translated into something that most of us are familiar with. We know what a percentile rank reflects from that national comparison with other grade level peers. So it compares the student's performance to other students in the same grade. That resulting percentile places the student also in one of 4 performance categories. That child will either be categorized as catch-up, developing, on track, and above. And on the next slide,
But before you go to
Yes,
the next
ma'am.
slide, Dr. May, I just want to make sure that I was reading the Amira Reading Mastery Score properly. So
yes,
I was looking at it as an indicator of where the student is in their progress, as like this is their category, but it's actually a score that tells their level. So a
Yes.
child that's in the 9th month of their 2nd grade year could be 2.1. They could, is the ARM score how they're functioning, or is it where they are in the timeline?
so it's how they're functioning per the standard academic year, but that decimal reflects the month within the context of that school year performance. So a 2.9 would mean that that child is really highly advanced within that 2nd grade level.
So your ARM score is reflecting how you are performing right now. It's not
Correct.
necessarily, like you could be 2.9 in the first month.
Exactly,
If you're
yes,
a
ma'am.
really high achiever, okay.
Correct.
So it's
Because-
not a category or a timestamp. It is like your Lexile. It's how you're
Yes.
doing.
It's an ability reflection, so all of the assessment tasks align with these various pillars, and what they're looking for, obviously, is proficiency in context of each of these pillars. So it's really pinpointing specifically where the child's skills map onto that academic school year.
So is everybody has a, I see like one for, okay. All right. Go ahead, and then Mrs. Campbell.
Well, thank you, because it's a little, like, a little different. And I have lots of, I do have, I'll say my other question. But on the slide before,
Yes,
number 1 of maintaining or increasing their ARM percentile rank from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, if their percentile rank is low, that's not growing. But is that referring to this 2.5 number? Or is that, because that number 1 didn't make a lot of sense to me.
I'll let Ms. Rylander
Okay.
talk about exactly how we computed that.
Okay.
Yes, so you are correct that even if they have a low percentile rank score, if it remains the same throughout the course of the year, that is considering meeting expected growth. Because if I begin, let's say, if maybe I'm a 2nd grader who is performing at an ARM level of a 1.5, whatever percentile rank that gives me. If I move through the end of 2nd grade and maybe I've come up to a 2.0 by the end of 2nd grade, that could leave me at the same percentile rank, but I have maintained, I have made growth throughout the year, right?
So it's not just the percentile rank then, it is your ARM score as well.
Right, so if your percentile rank stays the same from beginning to end of year, you have made a year's worth of classroom growth. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
It's kind of a little odd,
So
right?
it really doesn't, because if your percentile rank is in like 25th, lower 25th, like, and you are, it doesn't.
Okay, so if the 2nd digit of your ARM matches the month that you're in, you're on target for your grade for that school year.
Correct.
If the 2nd part of your ARM is greater than the month of the year, then you're killing it. So if 2.5, if it's the 5th month and you're at 2.5 in 2nd grade, you're on target. If you're at 2.9 in the fifth month, you're killing it.
Yes.
Right,
If
but
you're
it's the same
2.1.
percentile.
But I'm
okay.
starting at the arm. Now, with the percentile, that is the percentile of individuals who are functioning at that level, which is
Right.
different.
Right.
So maybe the whole class is at 2.1 in the fifth month. So the percentile would be different because it's the distribution of everybody who's performing at that time. Does that make sense? Like if we're all killing it, it's going to be a different percentile. If we're all struggling, you would be in a different percentile. The percentile is relative to the group.
No, I get that.
Okay.
But
It's a national. That
It's national.
percentile is a national.
National, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, it's, if it is what, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But that's okay.
Mrs. Campbell.
I'm there too a little bit. I like it though. I agree with you. I like how the specificity it provides. I can appreciate that as well. I guess my question is maybe along the same lines, and it involves maybe, so is there a correlation then between reading at grade level, could we say, even though this doesn't necessarily, it's not a one-to-one, but if they're like at a 2.5 in the fifth month of their second grade year, does that mean that they are successfully reading at grade level then because they've learned all the skills?
So that's an excellent question. So really that second way of being able to demonstrate meeting or exceeding, that maintaining an arm percentile rank above grade level, that range of 76th to 99th, that correlates strongly with the CCRPI expectations for reading on grade level. Moreover, when you're looking at the percentile rank and the 4 proficiency categories that emerge in the Amira. So we like to categorize students in our 4 quadrants. So they would be on track with regard to the Amira. As we're looking for that calibration with CCRPI, we're looking for on track and above.
And are we doing, and this might be a stupid question, but this, we said we're comparing it against the group, but the national average, and is this per child? Does the parent get their percentile rank per the national average? Are they getting it as a class? Does that make sense?
Yes, so the child will receive an ARM score and the corresponding percentile rank, so both. You're welcome.
Oh, Dr. Howard Hall.
Thank you. My concern with the ARM score ties with promotion. At the end of second grade, if a child's ARM score is at 2.0 and we promote them to third grade, that's probably having a direct correlation with the percentage of third graders who are reading below grade level, because we are moving them from second to third and they're actually on a second grade level at the end of the year. So what are we doing to, do we have, are we considering a promotion policy with first, second? Because it's really becoming a problem for these third.
So we are going to examine promotion and retention policies, but right now, we're trying to focus on grading, because we also realize that grading is an issue, because teachers' grades don't correlate to what parents are saying at the end of the year. So right now, as a team, one of our first dominoes is looking at our grading policy, which is the work we're doing this year, while we're exploring retention policies. But it is a topic that has come up, and it is a topic that we know we need to address. But right now, we don't have a lot of students that are promoted or retained based on test data.
And I also learned at the Center for Strong Public Schools, some school systems report cards have a section on there that show that they are below grade level. So if they see that B in that class, it indicates that they are performing below grade level according to the ARMS.
But the issue we see is that parents are getting test scores at the end of the year that say one thing, but then all year, what they see on the report card that the teacher is giving them is a different grade. That does not correlate. And so as a parent, I'm trying to reconcile, is the teacher right? Or is this test score right? And I think we're trying to address and calibrate around grading first. That may be the wrong strategy. Maybe we need to do promotion and retention first. I don't know. But that's the strategy where we've landed. But the parents that I have encountered struggle with reconciling. But also realize that a test is a test given on one day, one snapshot in time. So you have to be careful about how much weight you put on a single test score when you're making a promotion or retention decision.
Mrs. Hall, and then uh, Dr. Barnes, I think, wanted to respond before Dr. Watts weighed in. Did you want to add to this point?
Yeah, so I'll
Okay,
add
then Mrs. Hall.
into, so the policy is what Dr. Watts said. We will be looking at that. But when it comes down promotion, we know that that is a fundamental duty of the principal. So what we'll work with principals on is looking at all data points around the student to make a more informed decision before just promoting students. But what we have to make sure is that if a decision around a mirror data, classroom data, is showing that the student is not demonstrating the fundamental skills necessary to be promoted from second grade to third grade, we have to also be positioned as to how we support that student differently in second grade if we were to retain them. But to answer the question, this will be an active component in the promotion retention decision. Like, we do have to consider this data point along with other data points.
And I think our policy aligns to what you said now. What I think some interest of board members has been is, do we strengthen our current policy to say if a student has not met a test score? I mean, I'm just giving a suggestion. I'm not saying this is where we're heading, right? But our board could say, this is the threshold for promotion from second to third grade. And if that is then written into the policy, it would be something we would have to look at. I've lived in 2 other states where third, fifth, and eighth grade, if students don't pass their test, they are not promoted. And we also heard Mississippi use a similar reference point when we heard from Dr. Burke in the board retreat, that they had a retention policy that aligned to student performance on standardized tests. Our policy right now suggests looking at a myriad of data points, and sometimes that's where the vision can get clouded, because you can always find a data point that would suggest promotion or retention. And then it's not consistent across the board. You have some principals who may be putting heavy emphasis on one data point and another principal that may be putting less emphasis. So we've got to do some work in this area.
Mrs. Hall?
Yes, it was my experience about 15 years ago to do a calibration of middle school teachers, and we found that the instruction was way below what the test asked for.
Yes.
It was a very unpleasant experience. Teachers did not like being told that they were instructing well below where they should be. The rigor was not there.
Yes, ma'am.
So when we turn around and start talking about promotion and retention, first of all, let's remember the models. Let's look at this with a broad brush. If this is June and I'm at a 2.0 and I should be at a 2.9, let me see what I can do in July and August before you automatically say, no, I'm going to stay here. If we continually progress and if we stop this agrarian culture mindset of kids going to school, you know, and then out for 3 months, I think we could do a lot. But the instruction, I want us to look at that. I don't want us to just look at the kids and their performance. Let's look at what they were given. Was what they were given so great that a normal, intelligent kid should have gone from a 2.0 to a 2.9 in second grade? Was the instruction there and I just didn't get it? If so, then yes, let me do it again. But don't put me in a situation where I'm not getting the instruction that I need to pass a mirror in June and then tell me, oh, you have to stay back a year. And it's hard to do that because we're talking about evaluating adults,
That's right.
not just the children.
Well, I think that's where why we moved to having a myriad of factors considered in retention and promotion is when we had this discussion last time, we found that there were impacts of adult behavior that were affecting young person performance. I appreciate the idea of what's the intervention. I've been asking, as we're talking about intervention, what is the intervention? June is kind of late. But if you're looking at, if you're at 2.3 in March, what's the intervention that's being activated, and Ms. Goldman is going to get there? We've gone off the tracks, sorry.
No, actually,
But we're
actually, you're right on
excited and we're passionate, so,
actually, you're right on the track with the comment that I was
Okay.
going to share related to intervention. Although this data currently is not used, obviously, in the context of promotion and retention, it is used in the context of investigating intervention. So one of the requirements of House Bill 307, the Georgia Early Literacy and Dyslexia Act, is that we create tiered intervention plans for students who are demonstrating that they are not on track to attain grade level proficiency. So with the beginning of the year Amira scores, starting with those scores and then triangulating other data, there were students in our district who were put on intervention plans in response to both this Amira data and other data that teachers brought together to make those kind of determinations for students. So there is movement in the intervention space and responding to this data. So I did want to reassure you around that.
thank you. So we're excited about the ARM score. We'll let you proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So as we look at our kindergarten through second grade foundational literacy performance, we're going to take a look at the beginning to end of year performance for school year 2025 as compared to the prior school year 2024. So here what you see is to the left-hand side of the graph, you see the overall grades K2, the actual KPI measure. And then we also broke that down for you so you can see the performance for kindergarten students, first grade students, and second grade students. Also denoted on the graph is the target for school year 2025, which was 51%. So what you can see is that overall, we exceeded that by 17%. With first graders, when you look at the breakdown by each individual grade level, making the largest gains. In fact, first graders, you can see, made tremendous gains from school year 24 to 25.
So this is just end of year performance. This is
It's the growth that was experienced for the totality of the school year. So it's the beginning to end of year growth.
so it's delta.
Yes.
Okay. We set a target of 51%.
Correct?
How did we identify 51%? How did we decide that we wanted to do baseline plus 2 points when we blew this out of the water like this?
So when we looked at, we had to look at the baseline data 2024. So that baseline overall was 49% for students between kindergarten and second grade. So that overall aggregate score. And then when you're looking at the difference from 49 to 100%, we typically, Christy, do you want to share the exact formula that we typically use? We use a standard formula to determine that difference and what that percentage should be using the baseline data.
Sure. I think you all are somewhat familiar with our percentage of the gap formula that Dr. May was referencing. This particular one was set at 5% of the gap between the baseline and 100. Also keeping in mind that considering that we are looking at a percentage of students who are meeting or exceeding expected growth, that's a norm reference measure, so you would expect roughly around 50% of students to make it. And so both of those things were considerations when setting the target. I will go ahead and say also there were some considerations around, particularly in 2024, there were considerations around usage of the Amira tool at that time, and so that was sort of a factor in settling on that 5% of the gap where we might normally have gone with a 10%.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
So when you think about that and you think about the national norm being that 50th percentile, the target was set slightly above that. One of the things, of course, that helped with the degree. So one of the things to look at when you're looking at this improvement is thinking about the fact that from 24 to 25, there were huge improvements in the implementation with fidelity across all schools and those particular grade levels, obviously, of assessment. And with that, of course, came higher percentages of participation within those schools. So when we look,
I will just
Yes.
add that the target looks low to me as well. And I think I expressed that when our KPIs were developed, not just this KPI, but many KPIs we blew out of the water well before December. So we will be taking a stronger look at our formula moving forward. Because a 2% jump is very conservative, given where we need to go.
Thank you.
so in considering that target and looking at the exact performance, comparing school year 24 and 25, so just explicitly highlighting the KPI, we had 68% of our kindergarten through second grade students who met or exceeded expected growth. That is a 19-point gain over the previous school year, and it exceeded our target, as noted, by 17%. When we look at our student group performance, once again, keep in mind that 51% target, and then you can look at the breakdown by student group, so looking at race, ethnicity, gender, and then economically disadvantaged, English learners, and students with disability. What we saw was consistently across all of those student groups exceeding that target metric. So there was consistency in students performing very strongly with strong implementation and also strong instruction in the science of reading that corresponds directly to this Amira data.
I'm glad our students exceeded our expectations. That's what I'm glad of.
Yes, and then there's a next slide.
Yes.
So everybody just like, yeah,
Yes,
breathe in all the
and-
positivity from this slide, because there's more.
Yes.
Okay.
So that is our story, our previous story, right? So we wrap up that chapter on school year 2025, and now we begin the chapter for this school year. So let's take a look at our beginning of year performance. For the beginning of year performance, we are aligning the metric with House Bill 307, meaning that we're looking at grades K through 3. So you will see aggregate scores that correspond to kindergarten, first grade, second, and third grade performance. And you can see that breakdown provided with regard to the 4 ARM levels of performance. So you can see the differences in the percentages who are in the catch-up category, developing, on track, and above. And generally speaking, what you see is a pattern of where we would generally expect students to be at the beginning of the year, perhaps even a little stronger than anticipated. However, one thing I do want to note is that when we compared our beginning of year performance for kindergarten, first, second, and third grade with the performance of students in those same grade levels last year, we do see some differences. So kindergartners performed a little bit better with 1% higher than the previous year, being on track or above. But we did see slight declines in first grade, second grade, and third grade as compared to the previous year. One of the things to note, though, is that our participation continued to grow, meaning that we have more students in the denominator, which is going to pull for some of those slight differences. But overall, you can see that 40% of our kindergartners, 41% of our first graders, and then 49% of both our second and third graders are currently on track on the Amira assessment per grade level.
So, Dr. May, this is where I had questions. So I didn't think about the number of students. So how many students, what's our in the 2026 number, roughly?
I'm going to defer to Chris.
you on that. Okay, you'll get back to me now. Okay,
Yes,
so,
we have that exact data, and I apologize, I didn't bring in the foundational literacy report
Mm-hmm.
that was shared with you all. That data is contained there, and I'll be happy to reshare that, and I apologize
Okay, no, that's all
for
right.
not having that on hand. It'll provide you the overall plus per each grade level.
okay, thank you. I just was thinking about it in terms of you saying that was the different number of students who affected that. But what struck me about these numbers on this slide is on the drop in 8 points for second grade. That's last year's first graders, right?
Correct.
So that's the first graders that were like killing it on slide 8. So, and they've been using Amira. So do we know why we were like killing it, and then slump?
Because remember, Amira is going to reflect students' ability to perform on tasks associated with each of those pillars of literacy. So their performance in second grade is based on the skills expected for second graders in each of those pillars. So it's that specific performance, and it's not directly comparable to the skills that were appropriate for a first grader when they were in first grade. Those are different skills.
So is that similar to what Dr. Howard Hall was saying? Were they more ready for first grade and then got to second grade and holy cow, we're not ready for this? Since they're different pillars, is that slump attributed to less readiness for the next rigor, which is the second grade rigor?
I mean, wouldn't it be that when they test at the second grade, they're testing of what it would be to be proficient as a second grader?
Exactly, yes.
Which means what they would be had they had a year of instruction.
That's the key.
Correct.
Remember, they're at the beginning of the year, so
Right.
they've had no instruction.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Which they should be low because they've had no instruction,
Yes.
if that makes sense.
Yes,
All
it
right,
is.
that makes sense. So we need the end of year. Go
So,
ahead.
right, you can't really correlate first to second grade. They're like two independent tests that
skills are
measure
different.
what a student should master by the end of that year.
But the 8 points is less mastery than the previous set of first graders or second graders. So they're not where they're supposed to be for second grade because it's the beginning of the year, but they are performing worse than the previous cohort of
Correct.
kids in the same grade.
But this says on track. So is that
track and
beginning
above.
of year test not supposed to measure where they are supposed to be at the beginning of the year?
Correct.
Not at the end of the year?
It's at the
So that-
beginning of
Wait,
year.
wait, this is really important.
Yeah.
Sure.
So Dr. Watts, you're saying that this test that they're taking at the beginning of the year is testing what they're supposed to know at the end of the year?
What a student should have mastered by the end of their second grade year.
So.
Then why would it be considered on track to be expected to know something 9 months in advance?
So, if you refer to the bottom, so on track, students are meeting grade level expectations for reading, making typical
Typical progress.
progress, and performing similarly to the average student in their grade. But remember, it's based on the specific skills associated with each of those 5 pillars, but now those skills are upgraded to the second grade level. They're no longer the first grade
It seems to me, if you're
skills.
testing a student where they are at the beginning of the year to see if they're on track.
You're testing them where they should be at the end of the year.
It seems like based on the language here, that isn't the case.
That
It
isn't-
says
yeah.
expectations for reading.
Right.
Progress, performing similarly.
Yep.
So to me, it sounds like we're testing them as we go on each of those 5 pillars.
Correct.
And comparing them to children that are at the same place in the year, which means they're actually doing worse, meaning this isn't a test of what they should know by the end of the year, is how I read this. It's a test of where they should be at this point in time in the year.
But it's a larger percentile, so they're not supposed to be performing at the top percentile because it's the beginning of the year. That's why this says 50th to 74th percentile, right?
Right, but think about it in relation to GMAS and state standards. So the skills would be similar to our standards for each grade level. So they're being tested on second grade skills. But having said that, from a cohort model, this year's cohort of second graders, yes, did perform 8% below last year's second grade cohort.
But
Correct.
that, and I know there's several comments about this. That's concerning for me because we groomed them K through first in a mirror. Like they should be, it should not be flipped that way. They should be prepared because they've been moving through this, this system.
Yes, but just as we have differences in standards, kindergarten and first grade standards may be a little lighter than second grade and third grade. As we progress, there are higher expectations. Standards are based on expectations for performance, and we're always going to increase that as students progress from one grade level to another. So thinking about that in context too.
That does make sense. We're going to need help, clearly, as board members, to understand what trends to expect in these data and to not be alarmed as we see the manifestation of the increased difficulty. Because right now, we're looking at it in kind of an alarmed way, I think.
Right, and I think one thing I want to point out, if you don't mind, is, so our second graders in last year's cohort would have been at 57% of them being on track or above, whereas this year's are 49%. And the general expectation at best, at highest, would be about 50%. So we're not doing poorly. I really do not want to cast any, the students are doing quite well for beginning of year. These are very reasonable scores with regard to students performing on track and above.
Okay, thank you. And maybe in the graphic, and I'm sorry, Mrs. Hall, I know you want to be recognized. Maybe in the graphic, maybe if this was tabular or something, maybe there'd be a number that would say what on track is, and that way we would see it comparatively and, calm down.
So on track, as you can see in the parenthetical, is that 50th percentile. It's from the 50th to the 74th. That's why I keep calibrating us back to that 50th percentile. That's literally, it's a very standard percentile distribution, with that 50th being right there in the middle and where the expectation is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Hall, you've been very patient. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just thinking that,
Uh-oh.
looking at the pillars, say we take phonics, you're going to be building on your phonetic awareness from first grade.
Yes, ma'am.
So now your phonics, instead of just knowing all the hard consonant sounds, maybe now you have to know your, what do you call the STR and what do you call that, Sherry?
So you're talking about like things like vowel teams and trigraphs and getting more complicated in that regard.
So you're building on what you had, but you're also having more difficulty, presented to you. So if the kids are at 2.2 right now in second grade, then they're on track. So and when would we see this again? Like in January, we'll see?
So the next assessment will be the middle of the year, which will be right before we go on winter break.
Okay.
So it'll be right at the
Wait with
beginning of
bated
December.
breath.
Ms. Taylor, I'm sorry. Mr. Rhodes and then, Ms. Taylor.
I just want to ask this question here. So what happens when you have a kid that don't do so well, that don't do so well, and also doesn't have that support at home? That's struggling They're in the first grade, they're in the second grade, so they're really a child. They don't understand. And so when we were talking about leaving them back, you know, what is that going to do? Like, it has to be some solutions to be able to help, because there's plenty of kids that I know for sure that's out there in our public schools that doesn't have the support at home, that doesn't have a parent that's going to put them in tutoring or anything, you know? And so what is it? What can we do to help kids in that situation? Because leaving them back, let's just say, for instance, you keep leaving them back, then it's like, what am I fighting for? What I'm going to school for? Forget it. And I just go right back out into the community and do whatever. But it has to be some type of support to where we'll be able to help kids to understand something, even if they don't understand, because some kids have disabilities. But I'm going to be honest, in some of our cultures, you know, it's not like it's, okay, you got a problem, I'm going to take you to get it fixed. It's, boy, get out my face, go sit down somewhere. And so we have to figure that out when we're dealing with all of the children. And even with test scores, even when I went to school, it was crazy because I can't stand math. But we had the Georgia High School graduation test during that time, back in 2004. I aced it with distinction. But science, which I always had A's in, I failed it and had to take it again. So, you know, when we're talking about taking those tests, you can't just base one thing and say, okay, you didn't meet this mark, so I'm going to leave you out. No, some people are great test takers, some are not. So we have to find balance, I believe.
Yes, to address two of your points. First of all, what we do to intervene when, in order to provide a student with support, kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where we take this data together with other data, because to the point that you made, one test score does not define a child. So a student could take a MIRA, and maybe that is a bad day for that student, right? And so what we do is we pull together other assessment data and classroom observations in order to make a determination of whether or not a student needs to have a very specific intervention plan. We use the data that comes from a MIRA. A MIRA can drill down very specifically and tell us if a student is struggling with decoding, exactly along that scope and sequence of skills, of phonics skills, we can pinpoint exactly what the student is struggling with, so we can pick up from that spot and work with that student, set goals for that student, and do interventions and then progress monitor to see if they are making growth. So we do have a very intentional process around intervening when we identify students who struggle based upon multiple data points.
It's Ms. Campbell, then Dr. Howard Hall.
Okay, this cohort data from slide, it's changed a little bit from the one that I'm looking at here. But it looks like, we had a slide at the beginning of ours that I really liked. It was on slide 2, and it was talking about the 4 times more likely to drop out. Did we have that one in here? For kids that can't read at grade level. And we know all these statistics, et cetera, that, you know, are bad news for a child as they advance through if they can't read at grade level, particularly 3rd grade being the benchmark that we have chosen. And one thing that I did want to agree with Dr. Howard Hall on, this was a note that I made. I keep hearing from teachers that they're very frustrated about the grading policy that administration at their local school is asking them to use, like 60% instead of a 0, because parents are frustrated that their child can't read, but their grades look wonderful. So I wanted to voice that. So it sounds like you guys are working on that, which I commend.
Wait, that's illegal, by the way. That is not policy to give a 60.
Instead of a 0?
That is, we addressed that last year. This came up as an issue of whether or not teachers are, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because I've seen it happen. I just want to point out that we're not supposed to be telling teachers to give a 60 instead of a 0. That's not, we don't have a published policy that says that's allowable. We did have a conversation that zeros can be very defeating.
Yes.
But if teachers are saying that they're being told to put in a grade that's not the earned grade, I just needed to be recorded somewhere that I know that that's not a legal act and that should not.
Are you saying even
happening.
if the principal is advising them not to, or?
I'm saying that my understanding as a board member is that principals should not be telling people to make up grades.
Okay.
So we need to look at the policy, and I'm sorry, but I don't know it off the top of my head. I can tell you where that derives from, though, if you'd like to just
I think yeah.
imagine for just a minute. So imagine you're a kid, and you try really hard, right? But you don't understand it, so you miss every question. Giving a kid a 50 gives that kid a chance to recover by the end of the year. If you give a child a couple of zeros on a couple of assignments, and you only take 8 grades for that semester or that 9 weeks, you only take 8 grades and 3 of them are zeros, it is almost impossible for a student to recover from that. The kid can make it, and you can write down the averages. You can write 3 zeros and 6 100s, and you add it and you divide. That kid will never recover. So you talk about unmotivational. I got 3 zeros and I really tried. Like, I didn't turn in a blank sheet of paper. I actually put answers down. All my answers were wrong. But I tried. Giving a kid a 50 is still a F. So it's like, how F do you want to make them?
Well,
You want to make them a recoverable F? Or do you want to make them like a F that they can actually get up in the morning and come back to school and recover from that F? Or do you want to just tell a kid 2 months into the school year that you've gotten 3 zeros, so you might as well not even come for the rest of the year? 'Cause
What was supposed
You're never coming back from
I
that.
understand that thinking, except for we're talking about a portion, we need a standard. And what I fear is that we're beginning to, we're not doing well. We're doing better. I agree. We're doing better in reading. I am very jazzed about the success and sitting with Ms. Barton and seeing her success with teachers, et cetera. But we need a standard, and we can't decide to leave policy up to the whims of just a student here, a student there. And I don't mean to minimize that student's experience, but back to what you were saying, I totally agree with you. If these students are not getting help at home, the worst thing that we can do for them is promote them without some intervention plan that addresses the concerns that they have, because you know that as they progress through and they're reading to learn, their parent isn't going to be intervening. They need that extra year, and we need to have a standard grade where, especially, I mean, not just for kids that are really failing or failing with hope or whatever it is, but for kids who are trying. If they're getting 50s or 60s, just other kids in the class who aren't doing the work or showing up or whatever at older grades, and this child is really trying, and they're doing just a little bit better, but they're all kind of ending up with the same grades in the end. That's disincentivizing.
So that's why we have to address grading, because I think we have varying practices based on people's philosophical beliefs. But how many grades should a teacher collect? Because if I'm a teacher and I'm only putting 3 grades in my grade book, and if I'm a kid and I make 1 bad test grade, I will never recover from that. To my understanding, I don't know that that's standardized, and if it is, it's not being implemented.
It's not
How
standardized.
much are teachers communicating? I can tell you from my experience as a parent in this district, a lot of times, all of what was in Power School didn't get fully populated until a week before report cards came out. So I don't really know what my
All
child's
the
grade
parents
is.
are saying like, amen.
Yeah, exactly, right? And then, am I a teacher who is offering makeup work? Am I a teacher whose assignment in 3rd grade is really rigorous, and I'm making a student write a paragraph versus a 3rd grade teacher over here where I might be having a kid color Mickey Mouse, and at the end of the day, both grades are A's? Like, we got a lot of work to do on grading, in my opinion, before we get to retention and promotion.
So let's,
You're talking about us.
well, that's,
Us up here.
we do make that policy on grading. I do want us to get to our KPIs. I want to put a bow on this conversation about giving someone a 60, because there was a practice of grade substitution that I was aware of when this conversation came up. And it was, if you put a 0 in the grade book and a young person sees that, there's no opportunity for recovery. You won't recover from the 0. And so it appears that an informal practice, at least when we had this conversation at a board meeting before where I was concerned about it, and it came up, was that some instructors were using a 60 as a placeholder for a redo and credit recovery. I'm going to put this right here. You're going to do this assignment. I'm going to change this grade to your redo, and that's going to be your grade. It's not beyond our thinking to believe that maybe some assignments didn't get redone. Maybe some instructors didn't push for the assignments to be redone and the substitution wasn't made. And I think that might be, I still don't know about this culture of principals pushing people to never use a zero. It could be happening. I haven't
That's
had
what
the
I've been told, that is actually the limit, 50 or 60, and they're not, and that to me is troubling, because we need a standard. We don't even know where they're at if we don't know what 0 equals and 100 equals, and they're already struggling to catch up or to develop, or they're on track. It's like, it's not correlating, and now we're trying to figure out an ARM score with a Lexile score,
Yeah.
reading at grade level. I just want us to all be on the same page so parents know where they are and kids know if they're going to need an intervention or whatever.
It's data manipulation and lying, and it's illegal.
Agreed.
I mean, people in Atlanta went to jail for that. So, I mean, it doesn't take a lot of conversation to know that you're not supposed to just put some grades in somewhere and say, this is what the children earn. But I think the level of conversation we've had on this issue with the district leadership is substantial enough for them to know what our feelings are on grading policy, to do some examination and come back and let us know, are our fears real? Is this rampant? Is it an exception? Is it grade substitution that just isn't being communicated well? I feel confident that they will come back to us with it, because I agree with you, there should be a standard, but there is a standard. We have a grading scale in our policy. It's a matter of people actually following it. Our presentation. Thank you. Y'all are very patient with us. Mr. Moss.
Explain. My head is exploding. This is a lot of data.
Yes, sir.
I'm a first grader. At the end of first grade, where should I be? Should I be at, but if I'm 1.9 at the beginning of the next year, and I heard you whisper this, and I heard you, Mrs. Hall. Summer happened.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But you're
So
still at the end of first grade.
I understand. I'm at the end of first grade, but summer happened. Would it not be better that our goal be that they not be at a 1.9, but they be at a 2 point something?
Yes.
Okay, to allow for that summer learning loss. So is that our goal?
Or we figure out summer learning
Yes.
Yes, right. Well, even better,
Yes, that's absolutely our goal.
even better.
That
So I heard
students
you,
are-
Ms. Hall.
Dr. Howard Hall, and then we are going to allow
Okay.
Dr. May and Ms. Goldman to complete their
Yes,
presentation.
this won't be long at all, but when you're looking at the color codes, catch up.
Yes.
How many students are in that category making high honor roll? They're catching up. So my thing is, these charts should be on the report card so parents can understand where their children are. He's making an S or a B, but he's catching up. They need to understand that. And I would commend Butler. I went to a meeting, family meeting last week, and she explained to the parents the state of the school. This is where we are. And some were upset because they didn't have a grandparents' day. She said, that's good to have those, but right now, this is the state of the school. And right now, this is your child's score. And those type meetings need to be, continue to be had throughout the year. Because when a parent sees, oh, my child has a high honor roll, but you're catching up.
That's very powerful. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Hall.
Grades, you can show a grade for effort, so that you might get an E in effort and be catching up. But there, you can't put the grade as A in a catching up category as a skill that you've mastered. But you certainly can have an effort grade. You're trying your best. So Let the teachers, I don't understand that you would put somebody on a high honor roll. That's so deceptive, if to make them feel good when all you have to do is say, hey, Dr. Hoskins Brown, your child is really trying, and I'm giving him an E for effort. But he's catching up. A lot of this seems like it could be much more simple than it is. But I still say it's our responsibility. This whole grading thing, we can do all this. We're the ones who have the power to set all of this. And we talk and we philosophize, but we can set it. We can say every teacher in Chatham County use 60 or don't. So I don't want any more wringing of hands, when it's something that we could certainly tackle ourselves.
Ms. Grabowski?
Very quick. I'm just gonna, I know, I was trying not to say anything, but when we're talking about kindergarten through third grade, do we need grades? Are there not other metrics that could be more valuable? Proficient, needs improvement. That is, that's the Montessori way, and it's effective. Just gonna put it out there.
So for kindergarten, we do not have standard grades.
Okay, well, then first through third.
Yes,
Yeah, because I do remember the whole kindergarten. But anyways, I will just, because then that ties it closer to the standard and seems to me could be a more objective strategy. So I'll just put that out there in the.
Thank you. It is received. It's received. Are we at the literacy strategies?
We are. Thank you very much.
Yay.
Thank you so much. And I'm just going to touch upon some of the key literacy strategies that we're going to be using this school year. A lot of this I did share with you all at the retreat, but obviously important for the context of this presentation around foundational literacy. The slide, oh, whoopsie, I didn't advance the slide. Sorry. So last year, we were at the Tier 1 literacy instruction and implementing the piece around pedagogy to practice, digging into our science of reading training with letters, and then the implementation and familiarization with our new curriculum. And now what we are launching into is the grounding our instruction in the new ELA standards, which are now official for the state of Georgia as of this school year. And we're working with our teachers to really dive into what those standards are, what the expectations of the standards are, and what the progressions of those standards are across the grade levels so that they understand what is expected of students and the level of rigor that is expected of students, and then how they can tie the curriculum that we are using in order to accomplish what they need to understand. We are using some of our high leverage instructional, our high impact instructional practices. So this is our next stage of the implementation. Again, moving from that familiarization into the real internalization of some practices, but again, not wanting to go too wide. We're wanting to make sure that we go deep on the practices that really have the high impact, some of those including things like working on the heart words, those high frequency words that are difficult for students to decode, or our notice and note strategies, which tackle reading comprehension and how we engage our students around critical thinking and approaching text. I won't go into all the details on a lot of those strategies. You have that in your resource at the back of your presentation. But another piece that we are working on is our ongoing professional learning. So we are continuing our letters training. Our first cohorts are going to be doing Unit 7 of the 8 units in just a couple weeks, and we have our second batch of cohorts who are starting Unit 4. We have Coachly support through HMH for the live one-on-one coaching for our teachers so that they can get support around the curriculum in particular. We're really working to leverage data in order to create us to have very precise small group instruction in order to provide some of those interventions that we were just talking about a little bit earlier. And then we do have HMH coming in to provide on-site coaching days along with our core action walks to provide instructional support to our teachers and to our leaders. In terms of the work that we're doing with our external partners, we do have our community volunteers who are coming in to provide support, such as the Read United Buddies and the Love Mentors, who are providing one-on-one reading support in 11 of our schools right now. We are also starting to work in the Birth to Five literacy space. Just a couple of weeks ago, we held a Birth to Five summit with several community partners trying to galvanize some community leaders in various pieces of the community, such as the medical community and our clergy and our early learning centers, so that we can all come together on what the best strategies are for parents and families to support Birth to Five literacy so that our students are kindergarten ready when they do come to us. And then lastly, we just had our huge batch of literacy events with Literacy Week. We had our Lit Talks, we had Georgia Reads Day, we had family engagement events at all of the schools, and so we're really excited about the energy that we are bringing our families and our community together on the energy around literacy and the strategies that we're using in the schools. And with that, are there any questions?
Thank you. I do have, I'll start with one, Ms. Goldman, and that is on our coordination with community partners.
Yes.
I know that we have our Love Mentors and Read United. And in addition to like Loop It Up, we used to have Alpha Phi Alpha had their Alpha Bears. I know Lynx has Lynx Fame at Hubert, and 100 Black Men has their mentoring program. Like, have we pressed out the literacy emphasis to our community partners who are already running programs in the schools to say, we know you have your program, maybe it's on entrepreneurship, maybe it's on financial literacy, but we'd like you to on-ramp our literacy objectives? Like, have we maximized all of the groups that are working in our schools with young people?
We have been working with a variety of the groups. When I first came on board, we did bring all the groups together to help them understand the strategy that we were taking towards literacy instruction in the district, explaining to them what the science of reading was. In particular, when I'm thinking about Read United Buddies and the Love Mentors, we've done training with their volunteers specifically so that they understand what the science of reading is, and we've pointed them in the direction of materials to work with their students one-on-one so that we make sure that they are using materials that are aligned with the science. What we're doing is the teachers are using the data to identify specifically what skills those students should be working on with their one-on-one volunteer, and providing the volunteer with the materials that support the gap that the student is struggling with.
Okay, thank you.
So we are definitely getting a lot tighter around that.
Great, thanks. Mr. Moss, Dr. Howard Hall. Dr. Howard Hall.
Yes, how are we assisting the teachers with unpacking the HMH instructional piece? Because we found that there's a lot of bells and whistles involved, and it was overwhelming. So have we started on some type of assistance?
Yes.
Or is it at a district level?
Yes, so the HMH, so first of all, we do have the HMH walks with the publishers themselves that come into the schools 2 to 3 times, each of our schools 2 to 3 times a year, to do walks with the schools identify in advance what the pieces of the curriculum are that they're struggling with, so that the support that is provided is very tailored to that school and the pieces of the curriculum that they need support around. But also in the core action walks that are happening through the Office of School Leadership, there are priorities in terms of the support that's being provided by our school support officers, and goals that are being made so that the goals that are being set so that specific support is being provided to teachers or cluster or grade levels. I don't know if Dr. Barnes wants to address that more specifically at all.
Yeah, so in terms of unpacking HMH, we're doing it twofold. One, doing the collaborative planning is ensuring that the teachers understand the module, because we know that the module is one of the most important pieces. But then from there is looking at what is actually needed for Tier 1 instruction. So she shared a slide about Tier 1 instruction, and then, grounding it in the standards. So the next iteration where we are wanting to do mass scale is strategizing how to take the newly released standards and the evidence documents to go along with that to say, a student that's hypothetically in the 3rd grade, this is what they should be able to do as it relates to this standard. Then take the curriculum and say what parts of the curriculum allows the student to be able to demonstrate the mastery of that. We have to do those two things hand in hand. So that's what we're building into the teacher's planning session versus just opening the module of HMH and doing it page 1 to page whatever, and not really grounded in the standard for what a student need to know for 3rd grade around that particular standard.
I want to just go back to your question, because I'm not sure that we've answered it, and I've also heard similar complaints.
Yep.
So what we need to do as a district is go through the curriculum and take out the most essential items, not school by school, but as a district, and elevate those things so that each individual teacher and each individual school isn't going through each of those things with a fine-tooth comb. They can take the most important pieces, take those to the top, make sure those things are being taught, and then use the other pieces of the curriculum as needed. I don't know, and I'm not hearing from the team that that's what's happening, but what I've heard is your question. So I know I'm hearing for myself work that I need to do to reinforce that, the expectation that we're doing that, because I don't know that I heard it today. Maybe I missed it. I feel like every teacher and every school is like, and I've heard principals say, we're digging through this to figure out what's the most important thing. And to me, our teachers and principals should not be doing that individually. We should be saying, here is what is essential, and then you can use this other stuff as needed.
Did you still want to? And then Ms. Graham.
And I called you a couple of weeks ago on this. I believe because I hear it all the time, I believe we can do a better job with our potential outside partners, these groups that want to come in, and by having better suggestions of what help we need. Because, everyone wants to come read to our kids. Is reading to our kids what we need, or is it better for our kids to read to them? And I love the work that you've done with Love Mentors and with the Reading Buddies. But if all of our organizations can get more of that training, some basic training, so that everyone is on the same page. We're all using the science of reading. Because there are some people who don't know the science of reading, and they have, that they mean well. But if we could get everyone, and have suggestions for them, okay, so you want to do this? Well, why not do this? Yes, do we want you in our schools? Absolutely. You want you with our kids? Absolutely. But here is the best way you can help our kids.
Thank you. Ms. Grabowski?
Just a quick thing on the HMH, as I was listening to Dr. Watts, like if a teacher is teaching, Unit 7 next week, and the district hasn't had a chance to unpack and prioritize Unit 7, then the teacher has no choice. but to,
Exactly.
So it's like playing this constant catch-up.
Yes.
So how do we get?
We've
to
got
the
to get it
end.
done, because teachers are also doing, based on what my observations and what teachers are telling me, they're doing the same thing with interventions. So we have a lot of different things that they can
Yeah.
do for interventions. It's kind of up to the teacher to decide, do I do this or do I do this? And what I've asked, and maybe again, I just need to reinforce, is that we provide more guidance and explicitness around that. Because what I would prefer teachers to be doing during planning is not digging through things, but looking at the thing to be taught and internalizing that thing, making sure that they have a great activity to do. Pedagogy is strong, like where am I gonna put my directions? That's what they need to be spending time in planning doing, not digging through boxes and trying to figure out what page is the best page to start on.
Yeah.
But what I'm not hearing that right now, so maybe I haven't been clear. I'm gonna own that I need to be clearer.
Okay. Well, and I think one of the things that we had talked about at the retreat was even setting forth an expectation and understanding what that process is to our teachers.
Yep.
So that they know, okay, by, next month, I can expect to have this guidance from the district so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming
Yep.
on how we are
Agreed.
going to address
Agreed.
it.
I do want to say that there are guidance documents that the curriculum instruction team does provide to the schools in terms of the modules and what should be happening with certain modules and trying to pull out the pieces. But I think it is still proving to be quite a task with all of the pieces of the curriculum. So I think kind of striking that proper balance between providing the guidance and the implementation is really, we're still trying to figure that piece out, to provide the proper support. And Mr. Chairman Moss, to your point, I do want to state that in terms of our volunteers that come in, we are driving any volunteers that come to us to the Right Read United Buddies organizations or to the Love Mentors and sharing with them the opportunities so that they could join those organizations in the opportunities to come into the schools.
So before I recognize Ms. Hall, I just want to point out, there are organizations that are in our schools that are not coming through that portal. They're coming in with their own programming, and that's why I'm suggesting, like Link's Fame, I'm a Link, and we have a program on the 4th at Hubert. We have a whole curriculum that we offer. And 100 Black Men has their program. So there are lots of organizations that are implementing young person development programs, and that's why I suggested that we might want to connect with them about informing, what their offering is.
Right.
To be able to amplify what we're doing with literacy.
Right. I guess I wasn't aware that those two organizations were doing things around literacy, because we have organizations that are going in and doing a variety of things. So I didn't realize that those two in particular were doing something around literacy, but we can definitely make sure to loop them in.
No,
that regard.
I don't think that they are focusing on
Oh,
literacy.
okay.
I'm saying that's what we're talking about, and we need them to do
Okay.
it. That's my suggestion.
Thank you for that
They
clarification.
don't want to, and so it's hard, because you want them to be able to do what service that they want to provide. If I had it my way, everybody would be doing something around literacy. It's the hardest balance.
I think it's a way to I think there's a way to cajole people into wanting what you want. I think that there are ways to build, like I can build marine science into just about anything, even if you don't want to do marine science. So I think there are probably ways that we can find the literacy component of what they are doing, because most of these programs are following some life development strategy based on a national organization. It's not just a couple of people sitting at home saying, I think I want to do this. They're using a program that's been developed at a national level and has a literacy component that just may need to be tuned up a little bit. Ms. Hall.
My question is for Dr. Watts. I just wonder.
Microphone.
Do we have the human resources needed on this curriculum committee to get this done in a timely fashion? It seems like we could call off on a hand the people who, we know, Ms. Burkhart.
Ms. Burkett?
Yeah, do we have enough people doing this? Are we using our resources so that we can get this done?
So we do have vacancies, so every resource has not been filled, but I'm also trying to balance the perception that central office is too bloated. Like, there are multiple things that are at play at any given time when it comes to resourcing staff. I want to remind everyone also that we are year 2 into a curriculum where we're also adopting new standards. And I hear the urgency, and I welcome the urgency and the push, but we also are where we are, and that's where we are. And we're going as fast as we can, while I'm also trying to balance that with other competing priorities and perceptions of our district.
Well, all this, I'm that kid who you want to hold back in June, all this comes into play. If you're going to decide that you have to listen to Mr. Blow down the street who thinks that central office is bloated, so you can't get the information to my teacher to let me know Unit 7, this is what I want you to concentrate on, don't plan to hold me back in June. It all comes back to us. And I'm saying, you have 9 bosses, that's all. Really, I mean, I know you have 9,000, but basically, but this is so critical. It's so critical that we're hypocrites if we sit around and, like I said, wring our hands, and we know this is the work that has to be done. Okay.
I did not anticipate the complete failure to get to the second presentation, but I do think that we've had a really good conversation. Dr. Howard Hall, and then I'll strategize with Ms. Taylor how we're going to recover.
Yes, we might need to consider using our master teachers and pulling them aside and give them a stipend to help with this, as opposed to waiting to hire people in those positions, because we have a shortage as it is, and we do have capable teachers, I feel, within each school that can maybe perhaps help with unpacking the HMH process.
Thank you.
thought.
So I hope that the leadership, when they go through and look at the notes, look at the minutes of this meeting, that you will extract the suggestions that we've made and follow up with committee members on either problems that they've identified or suggestions or relationships that can be further explored. I think it's been a fruitful discussion. This is what we are charged to do, to really dig into this work. The KPI presentation, as best I understand, is developed based on the formula that we talked about before, the percentage change in the gap from 100%. Ms. Taylor, what is your preference for how to proceed? I think there are a couple options. One, we could potentially entertain, we had been talking about trying to schedule a virtual meeting. We could possibly entertain that, although we were looking to maybe do that next year. I'm just putting options out there. I think we could ask to borrow 15 minutes past the hour if that is enough time to do the presentation and people are available to do that. Or we could do this presentation at another time as yet to be determined, based on the urgency of the feedback that you need on this and the amount of time and discussion, and we would be disciplined in discussing it if we did it now. How would you like to proceed?
Certainly, I'm open. What I will say is the information that's being presented is for your awareness and information. What we would be sharing with you are places in our technical guide as it relates to both our baseline and targets that we noted previously as to be determined, because we were collecting baseline data in 2024. We now have that baseline data, and what we're doing is just showing you what we're plugging in for baselines and any impact that it may have on targets. So again, we are happy, whatever works, but also just know you have the information and it is just for your awareness, and so we're happy with.
Okay, thank you. Well, with that, I'm going to ask that we allow staff to quickly go through the presentation for the benefit of the community who has not seen this, hadn't seen the presentation. If we could quickly go through this, we will not ask questions, but we will commit to email staff members at another time if we should have a comment or a question about the presentation.
We're happy to do that, and Ms. Christy Rylander will lead that conversation.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all so much. And we are going to jump right in the interest of time. So I do want to spend a moment, though, setting the context. Ms. Taylor actually addressed this a little bit in her comment just now. But within the strategic plan, of course, we have our overview in front of us. But underlying the 4 strategic priorities and 14 objectives that you see here, we have just under 50 key performance indicators that give us our specific performance measures, including our baselines and targets. And so, to Ms. Taylor's point, when this plan was adopted back in the spring of 2024, we didn't have all of that baseline data yet. Anywhere we did not have baseline data, we either, well, first of all, the baselines were listed as to be determined. And then with regard to targets, we either used historical data to make our best attempt at getting a target in place, or in some cases, we were able to use like partial year data to project where we were going to be. But there were also some measures where we were looking at KPIs in brand new ways, and we did not have baselines or a projection of a target, and everything was TBD. And so primarily what we are going to see today are where we've replaced those TBDs. There are a couple of other areas where we realized we maybe needed to make some adjustments. And we have been working on all of that internally, generally about every couple of weeks. We've had a lot of discussions around this, reviewed it a lot with our teams, but what we had not done until today was bring this back in front of you for your information and awareness. And we wanted to make sure that we did that so that we can close any information gaps, because of course, school year 2026 brings us to the culmination of this existing strategic plan, and we are already getting excited about beginning our work on the next strategic plan, especially as we know we're going to be looking at some things in some very different ways, including targets. So we will begin with strategic priority 1. Within strategic priority 1, which is our priority that emphasizes students, we do have 5 KPIs where we had baselines that were formerly to be determined. Those baselines have been added. We did not change the preliminary targets that were already in place, either based on historical information or projections. Also within strategic priority 1, we had 2 KPIs where we did not have baselines or targets in place, and so those have been updated. That does include the K-2 foundational literacy that we just had all of the discussion around. I also want to point out here, this includes student well-being, and this one is a little bit of a difference in that you will see that we only have a school year 2026 target. That is because we had to shift and use school year 2025 as our baseline data for student well-being, because the state surveys that we use to derive that measure changed substantially from 24 to 25, and so we had to use 25 as a baseline. Strategic priority 1 is also an area where we realized that we needed to make sort of an adjustment beyond the TBD, right? So with our KPI that focuses on our pre-K students who are exhibiting readiness when they enter kindergarten, based on that Georgia kindergarten assessment, that readiness check. When we pulled that baseline data, we literally pulled school year 2024 GKids readiness check data. And we weren't really thinking about the fact that that's a beginning of year thing. So that data came from fall of 2023, and it reflected the readiness of our pre-K students who completed pre-K in school year 22-23. And so given the timing of when we were looking at all of this data, setting these targets, and seeing when we were going to see the outcome of all of that, right, we realized that it really would have been more appropriate to make our baseline using students who completed pre-K in school year 23-24, and then took that beginning of year GKids assessment in the fall of 24. And so that is the adjustment that you see there. And then finally, within strategic priority 1, we realized that when we were looking at our outcomes data for our students demonstrating typical or high growth on GMAS based on their student growth percentiles from the state, we used school year 2023 historical data to set those targets. And when the actual school year 2024 data came back for ELA, we saw that the percentages were about 10 to 15 points higher than that historical data that we had used to set the targets. And we also, this is another area where we have to take into consideration this is a norm referenced measure. And so we are aligning with the state in terms of looking at students making typical or high growth here, which is basically at or above the 41st percentile. So you would expect about 59% of students to make typical or high growth. When you look at our data for 2024 for ELA, we were coming in at 61% for our students with disabilities, 67% for our English learners, and 66% for all students. And so we had some pretty robust conversation, right, around wanting to maintain high expectations for students achieving growth, because that's critical, but also not being very unrealistic with regard to the norms and how much we were different from 23 to 24. And so the solution that we landed on was to just add a notation that we will either increase according to the preliminary targets that were already in place or maintain the growth rate above 65%. And that is all for strategic priority 1. We will move into strategic priority 2. We had 2 KPIs where we updated the baselines from TBD to reflect actual data. That was for our media documents translated and our number of community volunteers. And then we had a total of 4 KPIs where both the baselines and targets were updated from TBD. And those are the measures centered around our percentage of students whose parent or guardian has an active PowerSchool account, as well as our perception data for students, parents, and staff. And again, note that for the students and parents, that relies on those state surveys that were changed in school year 2025, and so that is why you will only see a school year 26 target there. School year 2025 is the new baseline. Also within strategic priority 2, there were 2 KPIs under objective C, which centers around our partnerships. And those were areas where we realized that maybe we needed just a little bit more time to make sure that we had all of the reporting protocols in place and all the documenting exactly how this was going to be tracked. And so for our partnerships that directly support student learning, we are clarifying that that will be finalized by the end of this calendar year. And then for our opportunities and unique student engagement and learning experiences, we are shifting that to a qualitative report just for the close of this strategic plan. And that's going to focus on the progress that we are making towards being able to track and monitor and identify those experiences aligned with that KPI so that we are positioned to have a quantifiable measure moving into the next strategic plan. For strategic priority 3, most of our KPIs had baselines and targets that were TBD, and so we have added each of those in. You will see that many of those were TBD because they center around perception data, which was derived from the surveys, the employee surveys that we implemented for the first time near the end of school year 24. So we got all of those in. We also had the perception data around employees feeling valued and appreciated, feeling that their professional development was valued, as well as some data around professional development, participation in offerings, and our retention of effective employees. Those were all of the impacted KPIs in this area. And then finally, for strategic priority 4, stewardship, we had 3 KPIs where we updated the baselines from to be determined to reflect their actual data. We had 1 KPI on the on-time completion of management action plans where we had to establish both the baseline and the target. And because that was a brand new measure for this strategic plan, we set that baseline for school year 2025. And then lastly, within strategic priority 4, with our annual deferred maintenance KPI, we actually updated the reporting criteria just to clarify that when we are performing that calculation on deferred maintenance, we are using the original eSPLOST 4 deferred maintenance budget as the denominator in that calculation, and then we specified exactly what that dollar amount is for the denominator. We calculated the baseline according to the updated reporting criteria, and then kept the existing preliminary targets. And finally, with our work order completion rate, this is another area where, just to close out this strategic plan, we're setting that as a qualitative report to provide updates on how preventative maintenance is being tracked and completed, and again, with the aim of positioning us to move into a more quantifiable way of looking at that in the next iteration of the strategic plan. Was that a record?
Excellent, thank you so very much. I think it was really important to get. Thank you, that was excellent. I think it was really important to get that on the record and allow the public to see how we are assessing ourselves, and very good job, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank everybody for being generous with an extra 9 minutes, and I'm going to invite the superintendent to give us closing comments before we depart.
Thank you so much, and I'll be brief. I appreciate everyone's attendance and participation and interest in this topic. The accountability conversation is a very important one. I hold accountability in high regard. I see much of the conversations that we have here in this room as a way for us to get better and to measure where we are in terms of our progress of where we want to be. So again, the guidance that you all have provided today will be input and considered as we advance, and the team stands ready to advance our work so we can reach our desired outcomes as a district.
Thank you, Dr. Watts, and thank you to our senior leadership for your expertise, for your excellent work and your ability to really field our questions and help us learn and understand. Thanks.